Keisha Reaves, owner and clinical director of Push Through Therapy, is dedicated to normalizing therapy and providing perinatal mental health support. With over 16 years of experience in the mental health field, Keisha is certified in perinatal mental health and has volunteered with Northside Hospital's Infant Loss and Bereavement Group. Keisha currently is a facilitator for the Mocha Moms Group at the Atlanta Birth Center, and she facilitates her own Black Moms Group through Push Through Therapy. Black maternal mental health and reproductive education is a strong passion of hers, as she was a founding coordinator and presenter for the Black Maternal Mental Health Summit for PSI Georgia. Please help me in welcoming the amazing Keisha Reaves.
Thank you so much, Chantel. Thank you for those kind words. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today, and I'm so excited to talk about today's topic. As you know, I am a therapist, and I am passionate about Black maternal mental health, as well as I'm a mother of 2 Black boys. So I understand the anxieties and worries that are associated with not only parenthood, but even just conceiving. And when we look at the statistics and the emotions that can come up from thinking about what the journey will look like. And so I wanted to create a presentation to talk about the different strategies to help anyone be able to cope. So as we go through this presentation, I do want to preface this, that I completely understand why anyone would feel very anxious whenever they're going into their doctor's appointments, whenever they have their due date coming up, and having lots of worries about their health, their baby's health, what will life look like after labor and delivery. But the purpose of this presentation is to equip you or anyone that you know with some strategies to help decrease those symptoms. The Black motherhood and parenthood experience is very unique to us because of all of the challenges that we have to face within our medical system, within our country. And it's just difficult to be able to navigate. But fortunately, we have platforms like PSI, and we have this summit to be able to become educated, to be able to create a tribe, to create collaborative opportunities, advocacy, so that we can be able to navigate this the best that we can, and we can enjoy this parenthood journey. To piggyback off of what Chantel was saying, I am a certified perinatal mental health therapist, and I own a group practice called Push Through Therapy. And we support parents all the way from trying to conceive, fertility issues, any type of loss, as well as beginning their parenthood journey. And I absolutely loved it. And I noticed that from the beginning of the pandemic all the way up until now, in working with several of my Black parents, anxiety was something that was definitely wearing on them during their pregnancy and even afterwards. And we're going to get into perinatal mood and anxiety disorders and some of the signs and symptoms. But that's kind of what motivated me to want to do this presentation, because we often see the statistics and we have to sit with those numbers. And I want to be able to talk about what do we do with ourselves, with our symptoms, with how we're feeling whenever we see those numbers on social media or even in presentations or conferences. What's next? What is the next step? Okay, I am informed, but what can I do for myself to help me feel as if I have any form of control to be able to move forward and feel as if I could be able to have the experience that I want as best as I can? So with that said, today we are going to go over understanding the perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, as well as a discussion on where the fears come from and strategies and tools to be able to combat. Tamara said, sometimes the numbers can bring on more fear. Absolutely. I've worked with some parents where they'll say ignorance is bliss. Like before I even knew what the stats are specifically for Georgia, I felt as if I could experience more happiness. But once you're confronted with what the numbers look like specifically for you based off of just your race, it can cause you to have so much fear. And it should be a joyous experience. So just to give a little bit of education on PMATs, which I know that, we talk about this often and throughout this program, but just to give a little bit more information on it. We say PMATs for short, but the long term is perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, and it's an umbrella term for mental disorders that women encounter during pregnancy and up to 1 year after birth. So often when we talk about PMATs, we focus a lot on the postpartum experience of it all, postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, but antepartum anxiety, antepartum depression are also something that's very relevant and is important to know about. So here on this slide, this gives you a full picture of all of the diagnoses that falls into PMATs. And one that I want us to focus heavily on today is the antepartum anxiety and depression. This is when anyone has become pregnant and is experiencing any anxiety or depressive symptoms. And this could be for several reasons. This could be because of, life stressors, job changes, finances, any type of stressors from their family or their romantic partner. But it also can come from if you've learned that you're going to have a complicated pregnancy. It can come from if you're having any health challenges yourself. Several parents we know experience where they have morning sickness throughout the entirety of the pregnancy, where they may have to be placed on bed rest. If they've learned any diagnosis about the baby, where they may learn that they may not go full term, they may have to have an early pregnancy or be monitored. All of those can cause a lot of anxiety. And for Black parents specifically, if you learn of these additional health issues, plus your life stressors, and then you put on the stats of just being a Black parent, that can cause you to have several fears where you're really just trying to race to the finish line of delivering the baby. And you can take out the being present for your entire pregnancy because you just want to get to the finish line. And that can be very difficult to be able to navigate. It's not to say that postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety are something that also impacts Black mothers, but just to talk about the pregnancy experience and how that can impact with navigating fears. So to look at some of those symptoms, we have feeling very anxious, having low self-esteem, feeling dread, feeling like you're not prepared, a loss of interest in activities you used to enjoy, feeling unmotivated to take care of yourself. And this rate may be as high as 15% in some countries. And it happens to about 7% of pregnant people overall. And this is just a general statistic for all mothers. And it's important that not just for you if you are a parent, but also if you are a support person, to be able to look at these symptoms for anyone who is in their pregnancy state, and if they're presenting that, so that you can ask proper questions and be able to adequately support them. So I want to have a couple of questions for the chat, and I want you to put it in there on why are Black mothers feeling anxious during pregnancy and during labor and delivery. Now, I know that we've talked extensively about this throughout the summit today, and I'm sure you guys are aware, but just to kind of put it out there in the atmosphere, why is this happening? All right, we got fear of dying, a legitimate fear for sure, because we know of so many Black mothers, regardless of your socioeconomic status, your educational background, who've lost their lives. Lack of adequate support systems, definitely. If you are a single parent, if you don't have family, we're not how we used to be back in the old days where you live on the street with all your family members. You may live in Washington State, your family may live in New York, and you have to figure all of that out on your own. Providers, family stressors, birth and institutional biases, absolutely. No trust in medical professionals, negative experience with trying to get adequate medical attention while pregnant, fear of the unknown, lack of support, fear of not being heard when there is a problem, fear of not being heard again, apprehension that their concerns or desires will not be heard, implicit bias of the healthcare provider system. Doctors and nurses are not taking our concerns seriously. They hear a lot of bad stories on the news, social media, families, and friends. Yes. even just reading all of that, like you can see it and you're like, the cards will feel like it's stacked against you, and it can feel very defeating. Systems, particularly insurance, yes. Lack of knowledge of Black women in pregnancy by medical professionals, all very good ones. So when we see all of those, I want to talk about the stats, but then like, what do we do about it? Because a lot of things are happening and being put into place, but sometimes we have to rely on ourselves of, I really want to enjoy this pregnancy. I really want to enjoy being a parent. What can I do to feel empowered? We can go to the next slide. So to piggyback of all of those things that are in the chat, the maternal death ratio for Black women is 2.5 times the ratio of white women, 14.7 for white women, and 3 times the ratio for Hispanic women, 11.8. A Black mother with a college education is at 60% greater risk for maternal death than a white or Hispanic woman with less than a high school education. Causes of death vary widely, with death from hemorrhaging, most likely during pregnancy and at the time of birth, and deaths from heart conditions and mental health related conditions. And state ratios vary widely. In 2018, some states reported more than 30 maternal deaths per 100,000 births, while others reported fewer than 15. And you can see based off of this, like with college education, it was 60%. Even when we talk about like people that we know, Cardi B, who is someone who had like postpartum depression, she said, this is a rap star who has like money. Serena Williams, who's a tennis star who almost had a near-death experience, and she's pleading and advocating with her doctors, with her knowing her medical history, for them to listen to her. She's an athlete who is wealthy. Something as simple as just Black women who are in Georgia, and not just Black women, but in comparison to someone who is well-known or someone who is economically on a higher level financially, regardless of your education, your finances, your insurance type, whether you're a single parent, whether you're married, whether you have a GED, it doesn't matter. These statistics impact Black parents. Next slide. And just to look at a little bit more stats and have some comparison. So when we talk about PMADs as a whole, 1 in 7 women experience a mood or anxiety disorder during pregnancy or after birth, whereas for Black women, it's 1 in 3 experience a mood or anxiety disorder during pregnancy or after birth. And when I get questions about this, when we talk about the whole umbrella term of PMADs, why this is, for 1 in 7, they're experiencing it for pre-existing mental health conditions, perhaps birth trauma, if they've had multiples, the temperament of their babies. It could be various issues, but for 1 in 3 for Black women, it's those on top of discrimination, racism, implicit bias, systematic issues in the medical system. Those are layered on top, and that's how it impacts Black parents. So for single Black women, the statistic doubles. And then in Georgia specifically, the maternal mortality rate for Black women is 66.3 deaths per 100,000 live births, compared to 43 for white women. So the statistics is astounding. And as you can see of how you feel, I know how I feel. When you read this, it almost feels risky to want to expand your family. It feels scary. It can feel defeating, but you are entitled to have a family, to have joy, to enjoy your pregnancy, to enjoy your labor and delivery experience. So let's talk about what to do with that fear and that anxiety when it comes up. So first, I like to tell all of my clients or people that I work with, do not allow the statistics to define your fate. It is always important to be informed. It is always good to know what is going on within your state, within your country, how the systems work so that you can be able to navigate it. But it doesn't mean that this has to be your story. And we're going to talk about how we can decrease those numbers for you specifically, how we can decrease your risk factors for PMADs, for you specifically. Black mothers are not the problem. It can feel that way because you can hear it being communicated as in for Black mothers it's this and for Black mothers it's that, but it's not Black mothers. That's the issue. Systematic racism is the problem. Discrimination is the problem. Implicit biases is the problem. And several other things that I didn't list is the issue. But it's how we navigate this through this issue. And this is almost like a sidetrack story because I do a Black maternal mental health training. And it's almost as if when enslaved individuals were freed and there was no healthcare system for them, there was nothing set up to support them at the end of slavery. And there were doctors amongst their own community to figure out how we can support each other as we navigate this, how we can create our own remedies and medicines, doctors amongst ourselves, midwives, doulas within our own communities to be able to support us. And in some ways, this is kind of what we're doing, of being able to figure out ways that we can create our own tribes and networks and collectives to help us because the system is not set up to help us. Next slide. So what to do to feel empowered? We can go to the next slide. All right, so get a doula. I tell everybody this. It is just so important. And I'm sure many of you have heard of this acronym of BRAIN. And I learned this from a doula who taught this to me of how it is something that helps you feel empowered in the event that you are going to your doctor's visits or in the event that you're in your labor and delivery and your provider presents to you, hey, we need to switch to an emergency C-section, or hey, we need to induce you. We think it would be good if we were able to give you whatever type of medication. Having the acronym of BRAIN helps you be able to really get a clear understanding of what is the benefits of this proposition, what are the risks that are associated, are there any alternatives? And then your intuition is, how do you feel about this? If they say, hey, we've been trying this natural birth thing for about 3 hours now, and we noticed that you have not moved at all. And we think it's best that we just go ahead with the C-section. How does it feel for you to hear that? What comes up for you? Does your gut say that, no, I want to try for a little bit longer. I want to keep pushing for a little bit longer. I'm still wanting to have a natural birth. And then need more time. Do I need to do this immediately? Can this be something that's delayed? What happens if I do nothing? And I also like to tell people with the acronym of BRAIN is not just something that you as the birthing parent has to know. Your partner or whoever is the support system or your family, have a team meeting to go over this acronym, meet with your doula as a family or with your partner together so that everybody is on the same page and has a plan. So in the event that you as the birthing person are not in the mind space to be able to like, what is that acronym? What do we talk about? What do we do? Because you're experiencing so much and so much is going on. Having that support person be there to advocate you and to say this as well is super essential. And then having that doula ahead of time, selecting your doula. There's different types of scholarships and grants if it's financially not feasible for you to afford one, where you can get a scholarship that can help cover for the cost. And being able to select a doula that's a good fit for you, to just have that other backup support person, because it's so needed to have all of the advocates on board for you so that you can feel empowered to have the birthing experience that you would like. Next slide. Select a provider that is a good fit for you. I like to tell people that we look at our medical providers as people who are experts on the medical field, but also look at yourself as an expert of your body. And this is a collaborative effort. You guys are working together for you to share what symptoms you're experiencing, for them to hear you and help you figure out what is best solution for you. So ask yourself these questions as you go into your doctor's office. Did you feel heard? Did you feel rushed? Did you feel dismissed? Did you feel like I had this question in my mind that I wanted to ask, but I didn't want to inconvenience them? They seemed like they had a lot of people waiting and they didn't really have time. So I didn't want to bother them. If you feel that way, then it's not a good fit. Does your provider take a personable approach? Have they familiarized themselves with your medical history? If you feel like you're constantly have to tell them, this is my second pregnancy, I had a loss last year, and they can't remember that, they're not a good fit for you. If you have to remind them that you have hypertension, if you have to remind them that you have diabetes or anything, if they can't remember your medical history, they're not a good fit. Do you feel like it's collaborative? Does the entire practice feel safe and comfortable for you? Because a lot of practices are there where you have to rotate amongst all of the providers, and whomever is on call at the time that you go into labor is the person that you'll see. So feeling like you have a good sense from everyone. Do you feel like you're just a number? And most importantly, do you feel seen? Never feel like it's too late to switch a provider. You can switch a provider the day of you go into labor. You can switch a provider at 35 weeks. You can go into labor at the hospital. And if the nurse that you have assigned to you does not vibe with your energy, you can ask the charge nurse to switch you to somebody else. You can feel empowered to make decisions to make this as much of a comfortable experience as possible. Next slide. Individual counseling. So you know I'm going to advocate for counseling. And I think it's super important that you find a therapist that specializes in perinatal mental health. Postpartum Support International has a directory where you can see a list of all of the therapists that specializes in perinatal mental health in the state of Georgia. And they also have a list for therapists that are women of color or therapists of color. It's important that they actually understand or know all of that about PMATs so that you don't have to explain too much and they have the education behind it. And you can gain strategies to combat anxiety and tools to help with any of the symptoms that you're experiencing. Just a side note about myself, so often cognitive behavioral therapy is an approach that we use in a therapy practice. And after I had my second, Ellis, I had him in April 2020, the height of the pandemic. And at the time of a civil uprising, this was my second Black son, and I am enjoying it, but then I'm turning on the news and it's George Floyd, it is Breonna Taylor, it is Aubrey, it's just like one person after another. And immediately I'm having this feeling, and I'm a therapist, immediately I'm having this feeling of, I got to equip my sons, like I got to prepare them, what am I going to do to help them be able to walk this earth in this country? And being able to bring my thoughts back to the present. He is a newborn. He was just born today. He is not driving yet. He is not on a college campus yet. He is not walking from the store across the street from our neighborhood yet. Let me enjoy and be present with who he is and where he is today, and I will deal with those things later. And that's what counseling can kind of help you with, because you will go into overprotective mode and you will think of all of the safety risks, but that's how you can kind of bring it back to the present. And it's also good that you establish your relationship with the therapist prior to giving birth, because you'll already have that rapport, that therapeutic alliance ahead of time. And then couples counseling is also super important and helpful for anyone that's preparing for parenthood, because we can have our plan before we have the baby, and then it can look a whole lot different after we have the baby. And just to reduce those stressors as much as possible is super helpful, and to learn strategies and navigating those stressful moments. Creating your tribe of support. So support groups. The Atlanta Birth Center has a Mocha Moms group. PSI offers several Black Moms group. Finding a group that's helpful for you so you don't feel alone. You can learn from others and what their experience is. Finding a lactation consultant, even just to have tips and strategies ahead of time. Rather you may breastfeed the whole time, rather you may opt not to breastfeed at all. A pelvic floor specialist is super important, so that you could just check in, see how you're physically feeling. Having a chiropractor, attend free educational courses, pickles and ice cream through Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies. It's free. Creating a birth plan of what you would like the labor and delivery experience to feel like, and having a provider that is supportive of you having a birth plan. And then creating a postpartum plan. Who's going to show up? What's meals going to look like? Who's going to bring me meals? Who's going to DoorDash meals? Who can I call when I'm having a stressful night? Who can come over and give me the opportunity of having a nap? Creating that. And a lot of those can be found online for free. And then defining your supports. So knowing your supports don't always have to be family. It can be neighbors. It can be somebody at your church. It can be your doula. It could be a coworker. It can be whatever you want it to make it be. And the support can look different for each person, whatever their strengths are. This could be someone who can run errands for you. He can pick up groceries from you. Someone who could come wash dishes for you. Someone who can give you opportunity to take a nap, watch the baby so you can go to Target and walk around, whatever, but kind of figuring out who those point people are for you. And this is a resource list that I always like to share for people, just books, apps that I find to be very helpful. Nurture is a huge one that I absolutely love, that is by Erica Chidi, as well as Mothering While Black, Boundaries and Burdens of Middle-Class Parenthood by Dawn Marie Dow. And then there's also the Expectful app. I recommend this to all of my clients. It was created by a Black woman, and it is for those who are trying to conceive, who are pregnant, as well as who are new parents. And it's different meditations, affirmations to help you if you're dealing with any anxieties or worries during pregnancy or after. The Earth app is amazing. Kimberly Sellers spoke at our last summit last year, and it's where tons of providers who have been vetted from other Black mothers, and you can actually pick and choose through them, kind of like an Angie's List, but just for providers for Black mothers and parents. The National Black Doula Association, where you can sort through a directory and find some doulas that are helpful for you, as well as other organizations that are supported to Black parents. So that is everything that I have present today. I wanted to open up for some questions, but I did want to leave you guys with the fact that Black mothers deserve joy. And that can just be an affirmation of its own, despite everything that we have against us, the challenges, the statistics, the providers that are not on board with learning, who are in whatever it is that they're in. Despite any of that, at the end of the day, Black mothers deserve joy. Black parents deserve joy. And that through strategies and through supports and networks, we can create that for ourselves. It's unfortunate that our experience is different, but we can lift each other's up and be able to enjoy this experience as we deserve to.
Wow, Keisha, thank you so much. Every time I hear you speak and present, I'm just blown away every single time. It was like the first time I've heard you present ever. And you always come with the facts and always come with the information that Black mothers and families really need to thrive. And I always appreciate that. So we do have one question for you. So this is from Shayna Lark. Can you speak to any current research suggesting that the postpartum period is/should be up to 7 years postpartum? Generally, the focus is so much on the months after birthing, which I get from a preventative standpoint. But I do think it's so important to look at the whole continuum and cyclic relationship of phases of motherhood. So, could you give us some insights on that, Keisha?
Yes, Shayna, you are on it. The postpartum, as far as like from a mental health diagnosis standpoint, does end after 1 year of giving birth, but it should go for years after so that we can have a clear picture of how a parent is impacted, even specifically since like the pandemic, just even getting that data. But the difficulty with it all is one, that a lot of researchers or even organizations are not as interested in collecting data or doing research on mothers, specifically Black parents. There are organizations like Morehouse School of Medicine and different other public health organizations that are doing their best to collect data, but we're just trying to get data just for pregnancy and after birth, and wanting to get any data to have something to offer for years afterwards. Because when I tell people about the impact of PMATs, that it's not just the parent, but it impacts the entire family, impacts the relationship, it impacts the child. We can even look at like the attachment styles between the parent and the child, whether it's an avoidant attachment or anxious attachment. And a lot of times for Black mothers specifically, we can show it with an anxious attachment style. where you're just worried about your child and if they're going to be safe, if they're going to be okay, what can you do to shield them, and how that shows up for them and generationally from parents ongoingly, how that looks for our ancestors. But to answer your question, I think that it should be. I think that there is limited research on it. I just think that more research studies should be presented in order for us to have more ability to get a clear snapshot of what that could look like. Thank you, Sheena.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much for that response, Keisha. Always very, very valuable information. And so I have a question for you. As a Black woman who has endured a very traumatic birthing experience, what would be your recommendations to really start that healing journey after something so traumatic, especially as you prepare to try again?
Absolutely. For one, I think that healing is something that definitely takes time. Sometimes when I work with clients, they can look at healing as wanting to rush the process. When am I going to get through this? When am I not going to feel this way anymore? When something traumatic happens, it can change a lot your life. It can change how you view things, how you interact with things, how you respond to things, even from a scientific standpoint of how your brain processes anything. And there's also something that's considered as secondary trauma, where you may not have been the first person to experience it, but even similar to us, where we hear some of these Black mother stories who that did not live to raise their children or experience a very birthing traumatic experience, and it can impact us and it can make us anxious and worried. So I think for one, it is to be able to give grace to your own healing journey and to also have some acceptance around that the trauma has changed how you will respond and react. I like to tell clients that anxiety is not something that you can cure, that will just go away with this coping skill or with this pill, but it's about being able to manage the worry and not allow the worry to manage you. And then also being able to find the adequate professionals to help support you through, whether that's trying again, pregnancy again. Pregnancy after a loss can be very difficult. You want to be present for the pregnancy, but you can also be very triggered and worried throughout the pregnancy. So to have all of those professionals in place to support you, give you strategies, as well as if it's a support group, there's a pregnant and present group at the Atlanta Birth Center that's offered for free. And like when I was talking about the Expectful app, just being able to have like a toolbox of strategies to help you get through it. And then there's also several books and journals that you can be able to share whatever that birthing story was and whatever experiences, fears, worries, feelings, sadness that can come up for you as you are taking steps forward. And it's always remembering that you're not forgetting what has happened, but you're just learning how to navigate forward while always being reminded of what occurred.